So let's go ahead and start creating a pod definition. acme-pod.yaml. YAML file is a declarative way of telling Kubernetes what the pod object looks like. API version v1. Kind is going to be pod because we're creating this YAML file for a pod. Metadata, then we'll add a metadata here in terms of labels. Labels are very important, play a very important role in selecting the pod when it comes to application traffic routing. So Acme portal is the key value pair here. Deployment is another one. Acme predictive stocks is the name of the deployment, and name of the application here is Acme portal. Next thing is we specify the container specification. Containers is a bunch of it's basically an array of different containers and their properties. So the first property is the image, the location of the repository and the name of the image of the Docker image. So we are going to use the Spring Boot application Docker image that we created in the last session. msart pivotal is the name of the repository, and my first boot on Docker is name of the image. Latest is the name of the tag. Name of this container is going to be Acme frontend. Next, we're going to have a bunch of ports. In this case, we have only one container port, but you can have more if you need. Container port 8080. Since this is a Spring Boot application, this port is going to be 8080, and then the protocol. So this is a very simple pod definition. Pod is a core Kubernetes construct or core Kubernetes object. It is a way of co-locating a handful of containers together. All the containers within a pod, they share a network namespace as well as IPC namespace. Here we are talking about the namespaces of the Linux kernel, not the Kubernetes namespace. When you share a network namespace, you also get the same IP address across all the containers and also the port space. So let's go ahead and now create a service YAML for this application, Acme service.yaml. API version, we start with API version. Kind is going to be service. And then again, we start with metadata. Labels, app, Acme service, deployment. We're going to use the same deployment name that we used earlier in the pod definition. And the name here, Acme service. Next, we're going to specify what this service is going to represent. Service is again a core Kubernetes object. It is used to have a facade in front of all the pods. Your pod is going to have a IP address, but it cannot be accessed externally. Also, the nature of the pod is that it is ephemeral. It can die, it can become unhealthy, it can be replaced with another container, another pod. So the pods can move around, their IP addresses can change, there could be multiple pods. The service is a facade that is used to access that application. And there are different types of services. In this particular case, we're going to use, first of all, let's define the ports. Port that we're going to use here is 8080. Name of this port is Acme homepage. Then at the port level, we're going to also use the selector. Selector is the one that is going to match the labels on the various ports. So app Acme portal is the selector, is the key value pair. It's going to find out all the ports with this matching key value pair, and it's going to route the traffic on those ports. The next type, the type of the service is load balancer. Load balancer is like a superset of node port. It gives you a automated way of creating the load balancer on the public cloud. In this case, we have GCP, and on GCP that support is there. So if your service type is load balancer, it's actually going to create a load balancer with a public IP so that your application will have a externally accessible entry point or endpoint. So this is the definition of a very simple service and pod definition for your application.